So I look kind of funny right now, and I don't usually always show myself on camera like this, but this is the raw life of a race car driver. We just got back home, Southern Oregon. It's about noon. We drove a little bit last night after the races from Grays Harbor, stopped, and then slept for many hours, and then woke up this morning and finished the drive home. It was very late. Our feature ran past midnight, and it was cold. It was so cold, literally right now I'm still in my K1 underclothes. I also have the pants on. Basically, when I changed out of my fire suit, I just left it on because it was that cold, and then I got so tired once we were all in the RV and everyone, it was dark and it was night. I just passed out like this. But anyway, this is the raw life of a race car driver. We're back home, but the work on this Sunday is not done. We're literally gonna get everything all unloaded, get everything back to the house, and once we get back there, we gotta get the race car fixed and gotta get the race car all washed up, as long as Carly's equipment too. So yeah, it's just part of living the dream, but we made it back home safely, which is what matters, and we have the rest of the week to get everything all fixed up and ready to hit the track again. Well, 2 cars means double the fun on wash day. It was pretty heavy, to say the least, at Grays Harbor last night. Got the 22C, the 18T. It's currently about 5:30 right now. We have just a couple hours left before it's dark, and it's time for Carly and I to get to work. If you just look at the car, right now, it literally looks the exact same as after Placerville. Like, the front axle bent in the same spot. It's cocked back here on the right. The only difference is I don't think it just got the axle. It also bent this hub. Man, we cannot catch a break. And it's frustrating, when things like that happen, but at the same time, you also have to look at it from a different angle. It could have also been much worse. Almost a little bit of a faster track. It was rough. I could have hit the wall much harder, and we could have had a much more wrecked race car, but I'm gonna do the exact same process as Placerville. Gotta remove this front axle and pull all the radius rods off, as well as maintenance the car, and then find our solution, because our titanium studs, from the problems we had this weekend and everything I'm seeing other people comment about them online, it's just not the safest option to have, especially in such an important part of your car where, you can't lose steering. That is one of the most dangerous situations in wing sprint car racing and racing in general. And I hate to say it, but I was just completely unaware that so many other drivers have had the same exact thing happen to them with these titanium studs. Some of the comments people had left on my Facebook post is how we should probably be running grade 8 bolts, which makes even more sense now, because obviously we saw how brittle these titanium studs can be, especially if you do have a couple of hits with them on the front end, and over time they get more worn out and eventually will just snap.
So I decided to throw the GoPro head mount on so you guys could watch a real amateur pull a front axle out of a sprint car. Got my 3/4 socket with a ratchet, and if you got one of those, you can take apart just about anything in the front end as far as the axle goes. You can pull all your radius rods off, disconnect them from the frame, disconnect them from the front axle, however you want to do it. You can see us working on the panhard bar here, and basically pull all of those off. In the meantime, I also got my 9/16 out, wanted to pull both of my front stops and front arms off the car just to make it easy, since I had to pull the torsion bars out anyway. And in the meantime, it also made it just a little bit easier to get the front axle out as well, which you see I have in my hands now, and we're gonna set on the floor.
So there is a little bit of a better look. And second race in a row, we have no front axle in our car after the weekend. So I would say every driver, crew, anybody a part of the team obviously gets mad when you wreck a car. And I would say I'm a pretty positive person, and I'm always frustrated at the track, but when I get the most aggravated is actually when I'm having to fix it. Or during the fixing process, I should say, as I'm taking this front axle out, all I can think about is man, if that stud didn't break, we possibly win the race, we run up front, we have a good weekend. Good weekends at the track lead to good weekends in the shop, which leads to more good weekends at the track. And when stuff like that happens, it just screws up your cycle, and now you just got to pray that everything's all right and it didn't tweak any little part of the chassis or any of our components, and just hope that all of our numbers will be where they need to be at the end of the week. But that's my 30-second rant. Back to work. Well, what are we doing tonight in the shop?
Building axles.
Building another front axle.
This one's gonna be with good shit.
Yeah. Now, I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I realized today, I think my dad jinxed us. I don't believe in that stuff, but if you remember, last week he kind of made a joke about needing to build more.
Probably should build another one. I'm just thinking it's probably gonna...
No, and sure enough, this week, or this weekend, things went wrong, and now we are building another front axle for the 18T. So he's taking care of that right now. We still have our old axle right here that we were gonna be taking apart, and then I'm doing a little tire work outside. I feel like now more than ever, I'm really being conservative about what tires I throw away, just because of the tire shortage at hand. You can kind of, you're trying to get as much life out of each left rear, right rear, and front as possible. So with a couple of these left rears, I'm flipping them, which even before the tire shortage I did. But usually the Hoosier white goes on the outside, and this one that I'm mounting up now will be on the inside, so it wears the other direction. And you can see that by looking at the pattern. So just really crazy times that we're living in. I know we're starting to see some tracks cancel. We're starting to see some of the panic, and we're seeing, the result of 0 tires in some areas in the West Coast, and where we're at is no different. So just trying to get as much life out of all these as we can, especially with, running 2 cars on some weekends with both Carly and I behind the wheel. Well, we're making progress on the 18T. Front axle is now back in the car. A new front axle, I should say, and actually mostly new components. We didn't just take the components off the other axle and put it on a new one. We got new front spindles. Everything's pretty shiny. As my father mentioned, we are not messing around this time. We absolutely got to make sure that nothing like that happens the rest of the season. But this is how far we got. We do have to put the hubs on next. But we are calling it for tonight. And we took apart our rect axle, and the only thing that this is probably good for is like a cane or a walking stick. Other than that, it is going in the scrap pile, aka the junkyard behind the shop. Anyway though, we are halfway through the week. We're making really solid progress. Now we just gotta watch the weather to see if it turns around for where we're supposed to be heading this weekend. We are planning on going to the Cottage Grove Speedway to run our 360 for their opening weekend called the Spring Fling that they have every year. Weather isn't looking too good, so if that rains out, we'll be headed south to Chico to run 2 nights in our 410. Looking forward to wherever we end up, because at the end of the day, we're gonna be at a racetrack with a lot of fans watching.